What's up, everybody? It's waba, and I want to take a little bit of time to talk about a build that I had theory crafted last night with a viewer on my stream, which you can check out at twitch.tv/waba, but a build that is an Incinerate Trickster build for 3.2. Just a disclaimer, this is going to be a little bit more of an advanced build. It's probably not ideal for solo self-found. It can be pretty expensive because obviously the best thing you could do is utilize or abuse abyssal jewels, which are going to be pretty expensive and hard to craft and come by, especially in Bestiary League. And there will be things that I forget in this video, like certain combinations of items could potentially work for this as well. It just all really comes down to, you know, like what you have access to and what is most reasonable. So yeah, I just want to throw that out there. If you do have an idea, or if you realize something that maybe I'm overlooking or forgetting, please comment down below, contribute, because, you know, I think there's a lot of hunger for a solid Incinerate build, and I think this could potentially be a good Incinerate build. Not necessarily the best, but definitely, you know, something that you could go out and use. Now, it's focused around Harness the Void. Let me just show you real quick, and I'm going to give you a quick explanation of how Harness the Void works, as quick as I could actually do it. So, Harness the Void gives you a chance gives your hits a chance to gain 25, 50, or 100% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage. This is important to remember. It's non-chaos damage for reasons I'll go into later. But when this was initially released, the values of this were actually doubled. So at first, it was a huge damage multiplier. It's still really good, but you have to figure out the right way to use it. And due to the coding in the game and the way the game mechanics are right now, one of the best ways to go about utilizing Harness the Void is through conversion. Now, for example, and this is how all conversion works in Path of Exile. Again, I'm pretty confident that I'm right, but to convert, you could only go one way. You go from physical to lightning to cold to fire, finally to chaos. There are some ways you can skip conversions, but you can never go backwards. So you can't go from cold to lightning, or you can't go from cold to physical, but you can go from physical to cold. With Harness the Void, the extra damage is based off of every single stage of conversion. So if you're going with full conversion and you convert at each stage, say you deal 100 physical damage and you get 5% chance to gain 100% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage. That hit is going to deal 100 physical damage and 100 chaos damage. Now, if you convert it to lightning at 100%, you will no longer deal physical damage, but you will be gaining the 100 chaos damage from that physical damage. So you will hit for 100 lightning damage and 200 chaos damage. If you do that one more time, full lightning to cold, and you have to have each stage of conversion in your passives or in your gear somehow, but you would deal 100 cold damage and you would gain 300 chaos damage. If you went from cold to fire, your final damage would be 100 fire damage, 400 chaos damage. A real example of this is with Glacial Cascade, and this is something that you can absolutely do. Glacial Cascade is a spell that deals physical damage but converts 60% of its damage to cold damage, and you could increase that to 100% full conversion through either the use of the Helmet enchant from Eternal Lab or Threshold Jewels. If you hit the 5% chance to gain 100% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage, and you have full cold conversion, you will then hit for 100 cold damage, 200 chaos damage. You could also convert 90% of your cold damage to fire damage with the use of a pyre and a cold to fire gem. So then your final hit of damage would actually hit for 290 chaos damage, 90 fire damage, and 10 cold damage. Those aren't the exact numbers because cold to fire does give you some added damage, and that would work as well. But for this example, you could just see that the more you convert, the better Harness the Void is. However, Also, the more you hit, the better Harness the Void is. And this is where the choice to go Incinerate comes into play. Now, like I said, I'm going to forget certain pieces of gear, certain potential combinations. But for right now, this is what I'm looking at. This is a build that is using a Tollfall Tornado Wand, which gives you frenzy charges when you reach maximum power charges. And the way we're going to be generating power charges is with the Romir's Banquet. This will keep you constantly at maximum frenzy charges. Your power charges will go up and down, absolutely, but your frenzy charges will stay like at maximum charges the entire time. When it comes to bossing, nodes like Swift Killer, while it is really good for bossing, it's not really ideal because you don't really get kills when you're killing Shaper. And that is kind of one of the metrics that people tend to use in Path of Exile. They will say, well, what's its Shaper DPS like? And I have this set up right now to show me Shaper DPS. And it's kind of alright, but it's a little misleading. So, Tollfall with a Romir's Banquet. Also using a Skin of the Loyal here, because that will actually work really well with Abyssal Jewels. And then Darkness Enthroned, Sintrek, all the pretty normal things for a CI build. Now, like I said, this build can be a little expensive. These are really good Abyss Jewels here, but let's go ahead and create a new one. Abyss, and this is how you do this if you're using Path of Building and you want to create an Abyss Jewel. You have to go to craft item and then you have to find it in the drop down and just make sure you hit rare, and you have to select the type of jewel, so know your prefixes and where your suffixes are, and I'll actually provide a link down below so you can look at that. So let's just say this is like a more kind of normal jewel. This is say tier 3, a tier 3 fire damage prefix, and then another tier 3 prefix, and then we won't even put a relevant, let's just say 10 energy shield. We won't even put a relevant suffix on there. So we're going to add that to build, and we'll go ahead and name it new item. Is that what it's called in here? Yeah. Edit new item, and we'll just call it generic Abyss Jewel. You have to make sure you click save. And the reason why I did that is because now we could swap these in, and you could see where it's at. Obviously, it's not going to be as much damage as one of these jewels, and we'll go ahead and say GG Abyss Jewel. We will put it in all caps so it stands out a little bit more. And I will provide this Path of Building in the description down below so you can actually check it out yourself. So as you can see, each of these jewels would add a lot of DPS between the increased tiers of the spell damage and also the fact that you get spell damage and in the suffix as well. And they would add a lot of energy shield. Actually, not too much energy shield. Yeah, because how much energy shield would this give? Oh, you actually get more energy shield with the generic Abyss Jewels because of the addition of the intelligence, which is actually pretty good to know. But either way, let's just throw those in there. And we'll actually do this as well, because Grand Spectrums is not necessarily something that you have to use in this. But Grand Spectrums are pretty good, and there's a way you can make this build get many, many more jewel sockets. So if you do that, then you could use a bit Grand Spectrum jewels. And the one nice thing I'll say about Grand Spectrum jewels is at least you could count on them. Like, you know how much you're buying them for. You don't have to look for the Abyss Jewels with the perfect rolls. You don't have to craft it. You don't have to do any of that. You could just utilize it, and you could see actually if we throw in Grand Spectrums right here and just do this, your DPS goes up about 11% more damage overall for your single target. But we'll just go back to the generic Abyss Jewels. And the ES is pretty alright. But everything else is pretty normal. And at Xeri's Flask, this is just to give you more constant life leech, because you're going to be dealing quite a bit of chaos damage, even without Harness the Void. A Silver Flask gives you cast speed, movement speed, and attack speed, all of which are pretty good. The cast speed and the movement speed are probably your most important. And then a Sulfur Flask just gives you 40% increased general damage, which honestly, it adds quite a bit. You can see it adds about, at this point, about 8%, 9% more damage, because that's a lot of generic damage. And then your last flask could probably just be a Quicksilver of Adrenaline, and I would probably say a Phasing Flask. So that's that. The skill setup is pretty normal. Fire penetration wins out a lot over most things, even like a level 4 Empower, which I will show you real quick. If you throw in an Empower right here and you make it level 4, and then you compare them, this gives you 68,000 damage, while this one gives you 50,000 damage. So a 20/20 fire penetration just beats this pretty handily. There might be some exceptions sometimes if you don't get fire damage on all of your Abyss Jewels. Let's say you get a tier 1 lightning damage roll on, or a tier 1 cold damage roll. Because you are wanting your chaos damage more than anything, that's probably a better way to go about it. But if it's all about balancing in Path of Exile. If you have mostly fire damage, which you will in this build, outside of the chance to gain extra damage from Harness the Void, fire penetration is going to win out. But if you have a lot of other elemental damage, it may not. A Warlord's Mark and a Projectile Weakness with a Discipline, both on Blasphemy, in a Heretic's Veil. The one thing that kind of sucks about CI is that you kind of always need to use a Discipline, and CI, it is incredibly hard to get Triple Curse. Why this is relevant is because the way that our passive tree is, if you were to swap on a Cosprey's Will, which would be really good and would be good with the new node Escape Artist, you then drop Whispers of Doom. It's just so hard. You have to invest so much in mana reservation. You have to get things like Enlighten. You could probably do it, but it's very high end. So going with 2 curses initially is the way to go, I think. A Warlord's Mark is to give you leech on all of your damage. Projectile Weakness, obviously pretty good when you combine it with something such as Incinerate, which is a projectile. Discipline's really good. Lightning Golem, this could be any golem that you want. It could be a Flame Golem, it could be a Lightning Golem, it could be a... Well, actually, it's only those 2 golems. I guess you could use a Chaos Golem if you really wanted. And then we also have a Val Hasten here that is disabled. But, you know, this would only be in times of single target damage. Let's go ahead and... This is with GMP right here. So that may be something you would maintain while you're going through. Maybe you're going to run Valgrace or something for a little bit more defenses. That might be a little bit better. Let's talk about the passive tree a little bit. Again, I worked on this quite a bit and got to the conclusion that I got to. An Escape Artist with a Cosprey's Will gives a little bit less energy shield than Skin of the Loyal does. So you got to remember that. Also, Skin of the Loyal has the benefit of being 6-linked already, and then you get +1 gems out of it, so it actually helps your damage quite a bit. So we do use Ghost Dance, Weave the Arcane, Swift Killer, and Harness the Void. If you were to try something like Consuming Dark, which I don't think I would recommend, you can use Patient Reaper. You know, if someone can try that out, go for it. Let me know. Because you would poison, and then you would probably want to go Patient Reaper and maybe even Escape Artist, so you could go Cosprey's Will and Patient Reaper, and you would just always poison. It might actually be an okay poison build because you do get so much added chaos damage. Do get Elemental Overload, which we will maintain with a Orb of Storm setup, which I don't have in the tree, but I will add it. And then everything else is pretty like, okay, get as much ES as you can, get Jewel Sockets, and cast speed is really big. Snowforge is also really big. It adds quite a bit of damage. It adds a good amount of damage. And then, yeah. Another thing that I actually really like in this, because in our gear we do have an Eye of Kyula, but this build does actually lend itself a little bit better to using nimbleness and practical application, which actually gives you 70% chance to avoid stuns while you are casting. Right? Yeah. So it gives you 70% chance to avoid stuns while you're casting. So you might actually be able to figure out a way to get more chance to avoid stuns. Right down here. Actually, this is really good. And when you do that, you could actually just be stun immune, and you could probably drop Eye of Kyula. You just have to make sure that you're casting quite a bit. Harness the Void looks pretty cool. Maybe this is a way to use it with Incinerate. You could follow me on my Twitter at Wabacha. I usually just broadcast when I say I'm going to go live. You could also follow me on my stream, twitch.tv/Wabacha. And also, for those of you who don't really pay you don't pay attention to Twitch that much, or you're not on it, you're just a big lurker, but so you just stay off of it quite a bit, you could add me in game at Wabacha, and that would actually really help me if you guys could, just come hang out in my chat, and whenever an interesting topic comes up, which they do on my stream, I'm gonna be honest, I have pretty good conversations on my stream, but whenever they do come up, maybe you could pop out of lurker mode and share your thoughts with me. So yeah, this is the Harness the Void Trickster Incinerate build. Let me know what you guys think, and I hope to see some interesting discussion down in the comments. Thank you guys very much. See you later.